So I'm around a lot of people in the project management and software development world. And actually some of the students in the accelerator program speak agile terminology as well. So I'm often hearing a lot of this terminology being thrown around me. And the other day, people were talking and they were like using this term anti-pattern. And I was like, well, what does that mean? Because I don't think I've heard that one before. And then it got explained to me and I was like, oh, that makes perfect sense. So essentially what this term means, anti-pattern, is essentially like our response to reoccurring problems that is like ineffective and counterproductive. And so what that means in very simple non-agile speak is, our habits that are basically bad for us, right? So for example, like me, eating sweets before bed is just like not a good idea, but I do it out of habit. So it got me thinking that it would be awesome to do a video around anti-patterns in leadership and talk to you guys about some of the habits that you want to replace those kind of reactive habits with, so that you can be that much more effective in your role. So if that sounds like something that's interesting to you, then hit that like button and subscribe button and let's get started. Hey there, friend. Welcome back to the channel. And if you're new around here, well, my name is Mac and I'm a leadership coach, but I actually work specifically with first-time team managers and helping them to become effective leaders. So like I said in the intro of this video, what I want to talk about today is some anti-patterns in leadership and talk about what you can replace your kind of default reaction to so that you are more of a proactive leader instead of a reactionary one. The number one anti-pattern that I want to talk about is when you're like so busy that you don't have time to like organize or prioritize your day. And I think a lot of us fall into this category where we kind of allow the day to drive our actions rather than intentionally deciding what's important and letting that drive our actions. And I think that's because a lot of us tend to wear this kind of badge of busy, kind of like an honor. You know what I mean? Like if you've ever asked somebody like, hey, how are you doing? And they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so busy. And they kind of like wear it kind of like this is, I feel drained by it, but it's a good thing that I'm busy, right? Like, I don't know. I think a lot of us in society kind of feel that way. I don't know if we've been like trained or conditioned to think that way, but I don't necessarily think that's a good thing that we're always busy. I know for myself, like if I feel like I'm too busy, like instantly I'm freaking out. And the reason I'm freaking out is because I already know, okay, that balls are being dropped and that I am not operating at my best. And again, I'm not talking about like seasons of busy. We're all going to have seasons of busy where sometimes we're going to have to like buckle down and things are nuts. But it shouldn't be like that every single day, because then we're bound to burn out. We're bound to make poor decisions and we're bound to like drop a few balls here and there. So we don't want to get into that habit of just being so busy all the time. So the habit that I want you guys to develop instead is be that intentional person that actually plans out and prioritizes your day, right? And I think in this video right here, I discussed the importance of planning out your day and your week, right? So like every morning at the very least, you should prioritize at least like 3 things. What are the top 3 things or most important things that you have to do that'll move the needle in terms of whatever you're doing, right? Like that's how I like to narrow it down. 3 things. Top 3 things that is going to make a big impact. And then at the end of the week, what I like to do is review my week so that I can make adjustments to the following week if I failed in some way. Or if there's something that I did really well, I want to double down on that, right? I want to make sure that I'm consistently learning. So you want to do the same thing. At the beginning of the day, figure out what your priorities are so that you can focus on that. And then at the end of the week, kind of do a review in terms of what your wins are, what kind of needs improvement, and what you will continue to do the next week, and then plan out your following week. That way, you're being far more purposeful about what you're focusing your attention on, because the truth of the matter is you can't focus on everything, but what you can do is focus on a few things and do that really, really well. So let that be the habit that you start implementing on the consistent instead of, just being habitually like super busy, right? Because that's just not good for anybody. So anti-pattern number 2 in leadership is when your team member comes to you with an issue and you instantly default to just answering it or solutioning it for them, right? Listen, I believe at the end of the day that as managers, we should always be training leaders. And that's going to be impossible for you to do if you're always stepping in and solutioning things for them. So what you have to actually train yourself to do instead, or the habit that you want to become your default, is that when someone comes to you with an issue, and rather than answering, your default should be to ask a question. And by asking them a series of questions, what you're doing is actually coaching them. And in coaching them, you'll actually help them to see that they actually already have the answer within them. You just, you're helping them pull it out so that they can use it to solution this issue. Now, yes, sometimes it is going to be the case where they don't have that solution within them. So there's not so many questions that you can ask to pull out of them. But what you can do is take the time in that moment to guide them through it, and then make sure that they understand that, hey, this is the mental model that I want you to take away from this so that you know how to deal with this situation if it comes up in the future. Make sure that you're stating that. That way you're developing them to think, as opposed to their default to be that you need to think for them, right? We don't want that. We want them to think. And so make sure that you're asking questions instead of just telling and giving people answers. Anti-pattern number 3 in leadership is analysis paralysis, or maybe like just not making any decision at all because you're so fearful of making the wrong choice. And this is totally understandable. The responsibility of being in a leadership role is quite heavy because the decisions that we make affect so many people. So we do need to be careful about the decisions that we're making, So I totally understand why some people feel a lot of fear around this and why it lends to analysis paralysis. But something that I've learned is that we can't always make the perfect decision. That's like the truth of the matter. But what we can do is demonstrate that we've thought about the risks associated with that decision. And a framework or a model that I like to follow is one that I learned from Keith Cunningham in the book, The Road Less Stupid, which I've talked about in this channel before. In fact, I will link that video for you here and in the description box below. But the framework that he teaches is very simple. When you are coming upon making a difficult decision, or just in general, a decision, what you can do is ask yourself, like, what's the upside, what's the downside, and can I live with the downside? And those 3 questions will ensure that you're thinking through kind of all the possibilities, including the probability of it not working out, which means that you will have thought through mitigating the risks associated with that decision that you're about to make. And so I want to encourage you to do the same thing. Instead of getting stuck in this analysis paralysis or just like being so fearful that you're going to make the wrong decision, think through what could go wrong and what you can do, like in terms of contingency planning around if that decision doesn't work out the way that you expect it to. You do not need 50 steps for decision making. You just need to think through how you're going to mitigate the risks. I mean, at the end of the day, if it can work for Keith Cunningham, who has been in business 40 plus years with tremendous businesses, then it can work for us, us managers who are making decisions on the ground in the day-to-day. So I want to encourage you to use that framework in making decisions and not be stuck in that kind of analysis paralysis kind of loop. Anti-pattern number 4 in leadership is going automatically to the punitive route of dealing with performance issues. So the other day I was talking to an executive and she was telling me that oftentimes like her managers like default to automatically like to the corrective action plan when dealing with underperforming team members. And I have to say, like, and I think I was telling her this too, like, I hear this quite often where I'm talking to managers and they're automatically going to the corrective action as soon as somebody does something that's incorrect or something that's wrong. And I'm not saying that that needs to be your last step, but it definitely shouldn't be your first step, right? Like, we want to get out of that habit and equip ourselves so that we know how to coach people before we go straight to like the corrective action plan. So the first like habit that you want to get into is asking yourself that question of like, why am I seeing this underperformance? What is at the root of this? Like, is it because I wasn't clear in expectations? Is it because this person doesn't have the proper training? Is it because something's going on? Like, let that be your default first before you jump to getting them into a corrective action plan, right? That's not going to help anybody. So I'm actually going to link for you in the corner and in the description box below a video that I did around accountability, right? Because I think that framework will really help you so that you don't jump to right away, like putting someone on a corrective action plan, but that you're actually making sure that you've set those clear expectations, that you've stated the impact, that they know what the implications are or consequences are to not doing it, and that you do have their commitment before you actually go to that step of the corrective action plan. So that's pretty much it in terms of some of the kind of common anti-patterns that I see in leadership, or some of the things that we default to as a reactionary leader that we want to definitely like switch or flip the switch on, so that we become more proactive leaders. So give this video a thumbs up if you found it helpful and if you learned something, and definitely subscribe so that you don't miss out on any other content that I share on this platform every single Tuesday. It was fantastic to be with you as always, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of the week. Don't forget to keep smiling, and I'll see you in the next one.